I am going to talk a little bit about this Carlos Castaneda, which I haven't ever talked about it, except for in my book. And there was a lot of things I didn't understand at the time. And, things evolve and new information comes out and stuff. So when I was about 17, my big brother was reading a lot of Carlos Castaneda. I grew up in Mexico, so I was surrounded by the Indian people, by pyramids. I grew up basically hiking these pyramids and going into the ancient tunnel systems there. And we would go and find crystals and arrowheads. I mean, we were always finding little caritas that were created by the Indians for their sacred practices and all the stuff. So it was really natural for me to fall into a Toltec path. And I was also looking for something that was more my upbringing, and Christianity was not doing it for me. And even parts of Buddhism and the Indian philosophies, just I couldn't connect. And part of it is because I was born in Mexico, and I spent my early years there until I was 9 years old, and my first language was Spanish. And I was raised by my grandmother and my grandfather, who were avid arts. I went to like every museum. I read a lot. By the time I was 9, I'd already traveled to every pyramid in Mexico. So it was very deep and culturally rich. So when I got to the United States, I was shell-shocked. Happens a lot. I mean, I went from like a 20,000-year culture, if not older, to, 200-year-old culture. I literally had culture shock. But, I took to the arts, and that helped me. And I flourished in the arts because my grandmother had taught me how to paint. And I learned and read and just became an avid historian on many levels. I graduated with art history instead of painting. Even though I'm a painter, I gravitated towards history and always have. I've always read the classics. I've always gravitated to what the hell is going on, who are we, what are we doing here, what is the truth. Definitely the history is written by the conqueror, and so you can get a really skewed disadvantage if you just read the orthodox history. So I was looking for alternative books, and not self-help books. I gravitated towards anything that was done prior, like 2,000 years ago. Really ancient texts, the Upanishads, the Rig Veda, the Popol Vuh, anything that was ancient. And there was a lot of things that were off with Carlos Castaneda, but it was the only thing that I could understand in the American culture. So this is probably going to take longer than just one tape, so I'll just try to go through it. So I was about 17 when I first met Carlos Castaneda and his party. I had gone to a couple tensegrity platforms that they were putting on, and I had read everything about him, and the dreaming and the stalking and the, cloud stalking and earth, all these different things, the Nagual. What was I dealing with? Who were these people? Is this stuff real? yeah, I went straight into the dreaming. I was already so open, and I knew that there was something mysterious about this path, but I didn't know that it was so laced with the American culture. And by that I mean is that a lot of these pseudosciences and pseudo religions and they're laced with lies. We just don't have the knowledge that these ancients had. It took me a long time to figure all of this stuff out. And part of it is because I read and I study a lot and I seek the truth. So yeah, there was a lot of stuff going on. When I went to the tensegrity, we were doing tensegrity movements, and actually a lot of these movements were movements that the Toltecs had put together to collect energy from the stars. Now, I'm not exactly sure why they were just connecting to the stars so intensely, but the basic premise was that you had to have tits of steel in order to move through the paradigms. Otherwise, you'd get imploded upon, or you could get lost and you won't come back. So the whole thing was so much pressure and psychological pressure. When Carlos spotted me in the crowd, it was Florinda. And I'm not exactly sure what he saw, but he said that he saw light in the crowd and that it was a type of scout energy that was either around me or pointing me out. And I became close with Florinda. We exchanged phone numbers, and I think back then there was no cell phones, or I didn't even have an email. I mean, it was, you pick up the telephone and call somebody. I had a meeting with Carlos. We walked from the hotel. They flew me out to LA, and they had a private meeting and tensegrity, and Carol, the Nagual woman, was there, and a bunch of other people. I met somebody called a scout or something. It was very strange. The women were kind to me. They were just like, hey, what's up? And there wasn't really anything strange. I was so innocent and so so young. I really had no idea where I was. But I do remember Carol walking from point A to point B, and I didn't see her walking there. I just saw her move from one point to another. Things like that were happening constantly. And I went to my hotel. It was a really nice hotel that they put me up in. And on the way to getting some coffee, I saw this beautiful tan little backpack, leather backpack. And I was like, oh man, that's mine. But it was expensive. And back then, $60 was like really expensive for me. So I went back to my room and met Carlos for lunch. They picked me up, or he came, and we walked to a little Mexican restaurant. And on the way walking, there was a snail on the sidewalk, and I said, stop! And he looked at me, he goes, ¿Qué es? Like in Spanish. He said, ¿Qué es, querida? Como, ¿qué? And I said, es un caracol. He goes, ay, sí, un caracol. Caracol in Spanish means snail. So I picked up the snail and put it to the side so it wouldn't get crushed by our feet. and then continued. And he goes, I see now. He really went into like, these elaborate kind of mythological conversations. And he goes, I see now what you just did. You changed the path and the course of that snail. And I was like, yeah, it was going to get crushed. He goes, okay, from now on, I'm going to call you Caracol, little Caracol. So that was his nickname for me, the little Caracol, the little snail, slow and fragile, And I moved her to the side, meaning I had empathy, for the little things. So we went to the restaurant, and it was a normal restaurant serving Mexican food. We were just talking. I think I had 2 lunches there with him. The first one was, he was talking about the 3 bands of the luminous egg. And he said that one of my bands was crossed over and kind of jumbled up, entangled a little bit. And he drew out these 3 lines and like an egg around this human body. And he said, this one is tangled up. And I'd always felt like something was a little off with my energy. And to this day, I still have that. There's just something that I've just tried to correct and recorrect. And I think now, I'll get into that later. But we went, he had to make a phone call, so we went up to the payphone, which was like above, like the next floor above, and he called to have them pick us up. And as we were walking, I started to shake. And it's something that I've had as a little girl. I never knew why the shaking would happen, but it was what I can equate it to is kind of like what the Quakers used to go through, was the body just starts quivering and quaking. It's not necessarily a physical ailment. It's actually like your energy body is so excited and it's so in tune, and it's so it's just one with the universe. It starts to vibrate. And I said to him, look, my energy field is shaking. Look, feel it. And he felt my hand. He goes, I see, you're right. And he says, it's because you have so much energy. He says, you have so much power. So the next day we went to lunch, the same place. He really liked this place. It was like his favorite Mexican food restaurant. And just the way that he looked, he's Mexican. He was short, kind of stocky, blackish hair, Mexican features, but his eyes were really, really piercingly dark. Like you were talking to someone that was possibly like not human. That's how I felt. Yeah, he had this Nagua eyes. It's hard to describe. So I think he talked a little bit about the Florinda and the other ladies, and then he talked about one of the Tensegrity ladies, who he was just like, that girl freaking, the Chacmos, one of the girls, he's like, you don't want to mess with her, basically. She's got tits of steel, he said. So he was very adamant about me not having sex, and he wanted me to hone in on my energy field and hone in on my energy, so that I had enough energy to move through this paradigm shifts. And I was like, okay, I had like this scorpion boyfriend at the time who was pissed off that I was studying Nagual, Carlos Castaneda stuff. I mean, he's, we're all in our 20s. So it was difficult for me. And it was just, I was very adamant about maintaining my energy field. And in order to do these like magical feats, which, okay, I was told was impossible by most modern and historical, orthodox views. So I thought, okay, maybe I have a chance. So we sat at this Mexican restaurant, and the Barbra Streisand song kept playing over and over again. I can't remember what the song was, but he just kept ranting about this song. He's like, this is how it is. This is how humans are. They go over the same thing, ranting and going over the same memories and over the same. He's like, this is like how crazy humans are. They'll just go over the same stuff over and over and over again. It's like a broken record, he said. Humans and the human potential and the human mind is like a broken record. There's no cohesion, and there's certainly not enough energy to traverse or to paradigm walk. And paradigm walking is something that I came up with later. I mean, he didn't really describe it that way. He just described it more as this huge void that would basically swallow you up if you didn't have enough intent to get back. Unbending intent was his constant, what he said, unbending intent. And we were driving, and he showed me like his old, and through the car, he showed me like his old studio that he used to live at in LA. And I went back, and I'll share some more details about one of the nights. One of the nights, either the first or the second night, I had this dream that they came into my room, and he was doing something like, he pulled something in my back, like opened a gate in my back or like towards my neck. It was kind of like a hit, but it was like cracking something open inside of me. And when I told them about that the next morning, they were like, okay, let's not talk about that. Like, maybe it happened or maybe it didn't, or I don't know. And I showed him a picture of my family. And he said, this one, he's like, yes, but I'm interested in you. And I said, con ganas, tú tienes como ganas, meaning like there's a force inside of you. And he's just said these other people are manipulative. He wasn't interested in the manipulation, only the pure connection to the source and spirit, which I definitely had, especially when I was younger, because I just had no boundaries with the universe. The universe was mine, and I always had a really strong affinity for a connection with the divine within me. And I think they recognized that. But anyways, I went back to LA, I went back to Phoenix, and then I couldn't get him on the phone, and it was driving me crazy because I had made a connection. I'd made a connection with them, and I was like, damn, what the hell? Like, it's just done? Like, that's it? So I went back to LA, and I went back to that restaurant, and the restaurant was closed. And I was like, I looked inside, and literally, like, it was like dusty and dirty, like it had been there for years. I was so confused. So I went next door and I asked the people next door. I said, when did this Mexican restaurant close? I was just here like 2 weeks ago. And they looked at me like, yeah, that's been closed for like 30 years. And I was like, what? I went back to the restaurant and looked inside the windows, and yeah, man, it was dusty. It was like no one had been in there for 30 years. I knew that I had paradigm shifted with Carlos in that restaurant. And I knew that something was going on there. But I didn't have enough stability or awareness or groundedness. I just didn't know. So I went back to Phoenix and did my stuff and did my normal routine of painting and doing all that stuff. And I was meditating. And one day, I opened my eyes and I saw this huge tree in my neighbor's backyard, and the tree split into 2 halves. I mean, it was a huge oak. And I thought, oh, I've never seen this oak before. That's strange. And I managed to get Florinda on the phone, and I asked her about this tree in my neighbor's backyard. Because the next day I went to meditate, and I wasn't, thinking about it, and I looked up, and the tree was gone. And I thought, oh my gosh, the neighbors must have cut down this beautiful tree. So I walked over to my, to the fence, and I looked over and to see if I could see the stump. But there was nothing. There was no stump. There was nothing. But I recalled the tree so glorious, so huge, so omnipotently gorgeous, and I was really struck by this beautiful trunk that split in the perfect 2. And when I told her about this disappearing tree, and she said, "Oh, don't think about it too much. You just saw, a different timeline." And I was like, don't think about it too much. Okay. I mean, that's huge, right? I mean, you see a tree, it's huge, it's impacting you, and then the next morning it's gone. It's just not there. And so this was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it through these lessons, this reality, this, with nothing, with nobody telling me like what is possible, what is not possible. I was on my own as far as any guidelines. And that was the most brutal part about this situation with Carlos, is that I was obviously paradigm shifting, and I was obviously not able to maneuver. And so I became really afraid, of getting lost or of whatever. Like it impacted me so much. I read every single thing that I could about Nagual, the tonal, to try to understand what had happened to me and why I was just wide open. At some point, I think I went to Hawaii and did another tensegrity there. Little things, like I couldn't find my little ring. I looked for it everywhere. I had my coworkers try to find it at work. I went on my trip and I got to my destination. I opened my bag and there was my ring, literally balanced on, the edge of my suitcase. Or I went to the Hawaii, the tensegrity. Somebody offered to buy my journal for like $3,000. I said no. And a huge moth came and like landed on my journal. And as I looked at the moth, I saw like literally like jewels on its back. Like it was a magical moth. And I remember him talking about these moths in his books. Kind of like that Lord of the Ring thing, where they are like timekeepers or they information keepers or something. I mean, I knew that the moth was weird and different, but it was a comforting, like I felt a little comforted by it. So the tension and the pressure was ever growing because I was on this path of impeccability and stalking, like stalking the clouds. I was able to look up at a cloud and then cut the cloud down by just not giving it any room to grow. Clouds have a tendency to grow, but I would be able to make a cloud disappear. And this is one of the reasons why my boyfriend and I broke up, because we went camping one day and I looked up and I said, look at that cloud. And I just made it go away. And he just buried his face inside of my chest. And it's just, he was afraid. I wasn't afraid because, the energy field that we're all connected with is just part of the ether, and I'm part of that ether, and a part of it is my energy field. And I just manipulated the gravity and energy field around me and, was able to control the growing or shrinking of clouds. The shrinking was a lot easier than the growing, definitely. And that's part of just the yang energy that I have. It's more cutting. And so I knew I had a weakness there, which is probably why there was, something going on with my energy field. So again, the pressure to be impeccable was too much. And eventually I just told Carlos that I was having sex again, and he cut me off. Like, he never spoke to me again. So at that point, I was like, yeah, that's pretty brutal and pretty mean and manipulative, in the sense that I think what they wanted was my energy. And something protected me from being completely siphoned or completely, drained. But I was just already so psychologically fucked up. Part of it because I was literally paradigm shifting, the drop of a dime. And so I did not go into the forests and stuff because I knew that the forest was rearranging easier than like the cities. There was still rearranging in the cities, paradigm shifting in cities, like for instance that Mexican restaurant. But in the forest and stuff, that I knew was rearranging faster. It's like that saying, if a tree falls in the forest and you're not there, did it fall? So these things really captivated me. Time captivated me. Portals captivated me because I was like walking through paradigms. Like time was not what it was for most people. So I got scared because I didn't have a mentor. I had to learn and mentor myself. So I was really ungrounded for the big part of my 20s. And of course, I did my art and my music and just normal life and stuff. I went to India and had a friend do a puja with me to kind of get this energy of this kind of curse upon me. When somebody puts their energy on you and then they cut you off, it's partially to get more of your energy. This is the type of abuse that people go through. It's a type of narcissism. It's a type of psychopathy. And even in our industry, you trauma bond somebody and then, they're yours. So there was some sort of abuse happening on that level. But it wasn't sexual. I never felt like those boundaries were crossed. What it was energetic. It was a huge, powerful sorcerer that saw an opportunity to have someone in their life that was like a beacon, an energetic life force. And I think he needed that energetic boost in order to jump. Something in him didn't have enough energy, and I think that Don Juan had told him, you don't have it. So he knew at some point that he didn't have enough energy to do it. And of course, that was, why he had all of these things happen around him with these women. So I was blessed to have been cut off. But anyways, I went to India and I had a puja, very powerful puja done to get anything off of me. And 2 weeks later, Carlos died. So something was done to me, or something was attached to me, or something in his energy field. And what is the lesson? A dark sorcerer. And it doesn't mean that he didn't have light and laughter and a life and left a legacy. But what it does mean is that power, ultimate power corrupts ultimately, right? So the path of power, even though he taught the path of love and path of power as two forces working together, the desire to move and jump into this unknown with a certain amount of energy was more important to him. But he was on a mission to burn from within. Nothing mattered. Only that. And that's what he had learned from his teacher, from the Naguals and from Don Juan. The burning from within required that you had energy. So this is why they were doing the tensegrity and stuff. At that time, I just thought, oh, this is just weird stuff that we're doing. We're building our energy egg or, our cocoon and whatever. The paradigm shifting was weird because I was experiencing it. So something was happening in that lineage that was real. I don't think they knew exactly what was going on either, because not only was it shrouded in mystery, and not only was it shrouded in energy cultivation, there was still a lot that they didn't know. So a layman looking from the outside in would be like, oh, it's a cult. Oh, this guy was fooling everybody, or there was some sexual things going on with some of the girls. I mean, just endless stuff, which may or may not have been true. I don't know. I can only go through what I went through. I was definitely initiated into paradigm walking. Definitely. It was never the same. I never could go into situations just on that rooted, consent that we're all dreaming this one reality and we've all consented to it. I mean, I had already broken that contract. So I was already put apart from so much normalcy. And my art helped me to regulate my fear and my awareness and my concerns. I mean, I have to say that in general, the experience was negative. It was a teacher of power. It wasn't a teacher of love. And that's why I think when they did the puja on me and did a purification on me and sent back this stuff, and I think that's why he died. Partially. I mean, I don't know for sure. But the testament of that I did, when I wrote the book was just a way for me to process what had happened to me. And that book was a 10-year journey. I wrote it in 10 years. And then I uploaded it to like BookBaby or something. It sold like 2,000 copies in the first 3 weeks or something. And then I took it down. I was like, this book needs to be burned. It's just nobody should read this book, I thought, because it's too fucked up. And I took it down for a long time. I just didn't want anything to do with it. It was too weird. People didn't understand, and I didn't want to be like the person that had killed Carlos Castaneda, or the Nagual or the next whatever. But yeah, I mean, in a world of energy and power, you keep what you kill. So in many ways, I am a Nagual woman. And these were innocent and valuable lessons. Now I know. Now I'm more keen on understanding. I practiced Tai Chi for 20 years. So the first 10 years of practicing Tai Chi, I had to rewrite the book because now I understood things differently. For instance, the Nagual, the tonal, are the yin and the yang. And the eagle's gift and stuff like that, but this was the Shen. So what the Westerners didn't and don't understand is that internal martial arts and internal energy was part of these ancient Toltecs. They didn't sit around watching Netflix. They cultivated energy. Sorcery is the source. They cultivated the source of energy, which is chi. And this electromagnetic energy that builds around the body that he called the luminous egg in martial arts is, the biofield and the shield. I mean, in biophysics, the body has an electromagnetic energy field. And most of the Westerners don't know how to cultivate this. I mean, they don't even take it seriously. And these Naguals, that's what they did. They cultivated their internal martial arts. So they were able to, go up against 100 men. They were able to push a man over a tree. They were able to jump from over a huge oak. They were definitely able to do a lot more other things, possibly even fly. So, of course, we consider all these things impossible. But, when you're in tune with your energy field, I mean, look what I did with the clouds, and I'm just messing around at a coffee house when I'm 17 years old. This is all sorcery, source power, source energy, cultivating source energy, which is what I learned through Tai Chi, internal martial arts. And these naguals were very powerful, very powerful. And one of the things that I kind of figured out with my friend Simeon, because he's been one of the people in my life that kind of pulls that out of me, and because I just shut it off for so long and didn't understand it, and I didn't want to be part of it. Of course, it's terrifying to like the Orthodox Christian kind of, people that are locked into this consent to reality. Don Juan said, I didn't sign a contract for this reality. I'm not going to participate in it. I mean, it's kind of like in the Indian philosophies, be in the world but not of it. There is a consensual reality that we all consent to. But, people like Don Juan and this Nagual path, they didn't consent to it. They broke these agreements. And that's how they were able to traverse and to paradigm walk. They could give a fucking rat's ass about this paradigm. They were able to move through it in different timelines and maybe different planetary systems. But one thing is for sure, they needed their energy biofield to be intact. And same thing with the Egyptians. They were initiating people into the yin and yang internal martial arts, because this stuff was highly prized, highly coveted. It was definitely worth more than millions, because you created a house for your body that was electromagnetic in nature. I mean, then you can just go, from timeline to timeline and be intact. But I didn't know how to control it at the time. And the practice of internal martial arts made me understand that it was real, and it grounded me. So I built the electromagnetic field around me, and now, I have that force. I definitely can move 25 men off of my body. This is like supernatural, what most people would consider, like the comic book heroes. That's all chi, that's all sorcery, that's all magic, and, that's all internal martial arts. All of it. And so I had to rewrite the book in a more grounded way. And I had just commentaries and notes, dealing with the Nagual, dealing with the tonal. The tonal is everything we perceive it to be, and the Nagual is, everything that we don't perceive, the chi. But it's also the substantial and insubstantial, the yin and the yang. The Maya and the prana. There's different names for it. And the Tao, the great Tao. And so back to what Simeon and I were talking about is, I think the inorganic beings, something that Carlos was really afraid of, and also Don Juan was afraid of it, and these Naguals were terrified of it. Because once you cultivate your electromagnetic field, and you're able to traverse openly. He was afraid that he was going to be taken by the inorganic beings or be stuck in the realm of the inorganic beings. So what I think these inorganic beings are just the layers of onion, the layers of paradigms that encompasses our world. So just outside of this consented reality, there is another reality, so like, let's say the Sasquatch come from a different timeline, or the aliens above us, which he called flyers, are which he was also afraid of. The Naguals were afraid of these supernatural beings. I mean, come on, rightly so. They're so much more intelligent, and they operate on a whole different level. So yeah, they didn't want to mess with these guys, even though these Naguals, these very highly trained magical shaman, Nagual type of powerful people, they interacted with these other paradigms, very easily. And opening portals for them was like, you just step into one reality and you step out. Kind of like the Mexican restaurant. You step into one timeline, you step out. I definitely went to that restaurant. And in this paradigm, without Carlos in it, it had been closed for 30 years. And so Simeon and I talked about the time slips. It's different things that have happened to people, and the Tai Chi grounded me in a way that I could deal with all of this, time lapse and all of these paradigms is overlapping. Well, I wasn't, definitely was not prepared for Sasquatch or aliens, just being there. And part of it has to do with the development of my chi. You can't develop your chi without being like unnoticed, going unnoticed. So it creates a like another layer of danger of it's problematic. And for the most part, I've been very cordial with these beings, and they've been very cordial with me, and everything is, copacetic. But yeah, I can see how some people slip into these things and, they don't return. And I did some hallucinogenics back in the day, like mushrooms, datura, ginseng weed, and peyote. And the paradigm shifts and the paradigm walking was definitely happening. At one point in Tucson under, I think it was ginseng weed, like these things you don't want to do. And I remember getting in a fight with Carlos because he said, don't ever do these drugs ever again. And he called me a cracked cunt. And he says, if you do these drugs, you're a cracked cunt. In other words, you need your sobriety in order to come back. If you go into these places and you don't have sobriety, you're fucked. You can get lost in these paradigms. And that's what is happening with this impeccability, that I was attracted to the impeccable word. Don't fucking lie. You're only lying to yourself. And it weakens the willpower. When you are stuck in a paradigm and you need to get back, you need your willpower in order to get back. And lying only lessens and weakens that resolve. Same with drugs. And I did the Jimson weed when I was early 20s, and I was in Tucson, and I was stuck basically in between two worlds. I was like seeing like something from the 1800s, 1890. These people were like walking through me. I mean, it was one guy, you'd see somebody walk behind a pole and not come back out the other side, and so I've been stuck between two worlds before, and that is unsettling because you can't get out. And that is the Jimson weed. And when I was coming out of that, there's other things that I went through, but I'm not going to go into that right now. But that night, there was a white woman that slept with me in my room. And when I did some research on the Nagual plants and stuff of Jimson weed, they say there's a woman, and if she doesn't like you, she won't let you out. And so people can get stuck in these paradigms for a long, long time. She takes them. The spirit of the plant won't let you out. In many instances, on the psychoactive level and neurotoxin and all these different things in the Western psychology, that's what we perceive it to be. So this path of sorcery and Nagual is not for everybody, and it's definitely something I learned. I'll never do those drugs again, because you just have to learn the lesson once. And that was terrifying. And I remember him being so angry about it, which shocked me, because I was like, I thought he was going to be like all proud of me that I'm expanding my mind. But he was livid, angry. Sobriety from that point on became really important to me. And I am a coffee and tea lady. I like to sit at coffee shops, and I never went towards alcohol. I never went towards drugs, over or under the counter. I was just clean. And it's because of Carlos. Even though some of his books, he talks about some of the journeys he did, meeting him and having that experience made me realize that sobriety was by far the most important thing. Not sobriety in a way that you're just blindly going through this consensual reality, but in a way where your sobriety, your survival is connected to your sobriety. And there's been times where I wouldn't have gotten out of certain situations if I didn't have enough sobriety. Coming back to this paradigm, to this timeline. Because in quantum entanglement, quantum field and string theory, there's millions of realities going on. And each one of you in that reality thinks that it's, the right one. So you want to stay sober in order to be able to move into timelines that are cohesive and 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 good for your well-being. And I think that's why he was scared, and the Naguals were scared of getting taken by these inorganic beings, because they get captured. Terrifying. And he, to them, the universe, to these Nagual, to the Nagual party, the universe was predatory in nature. And I was just a cracked cunt. Giving away my energy through sexual acts, through drugs, and they required something a lot greater than I could give at 17. But the party ended up fizzling out because of power, the path of power. The path of power always leads to corruption. The path of love is the only path worth walking. I think Don Juan told him that. For some reason, Carlos followed the path of power. And partially it's because it's very seductive. Being a Nagual, it's very seductive. Power is seductive. You can walk in and out of paradigms, in and out of timelines. So that's one of the reasons why I didn't come out with the stuff. And I didn't want to be part of that lineage. I didn't want to be part of the power. I didn't want to be, just didn't want to be part of that. I wanted to be just an artist. I didn't want to be a teacher or a guru, because I saw the snares involved with power. And I didn't want to get caught up in the snares of power. And that's why I just followed the Tai Chi, the internal martial arts without the ego. Now, I do a lot of stuff with my art and my music, and I have fun there, playing with the light and sound and color. And, if that's egotistical to people, then like whatever. I am not a power-hungry guru, wannabe Nagual woman. I can tell you that. Because I just didn't want to follow that path. But I have a lot of knowledge. And I do have a lot of power. But partially that power is still intact because I don't use it. And I don't plan on using it. I wanted to do the book because I wanted to heal myself from this diffracted experience, because they didn't give me the full there's a saying, half knowledge is half wrong. You have to have the full awareness of the practice, just like you have to have the full awareness of a religion that you're practicing. You can't just be like, oh my God, like this very pseudo, very shallow awareness. And that's something that I definitely didn't have when I was, because partially I grew up in a very, very deep culture that was already part of the Nagual energy. already part of this ancient culture. It's in my blood. And Westerners don't understand that. They don't. So in many cases, this energy that I cultivated through Tai Chi and internal martial arts ended up just being part of that Nagual system. But it's just called something different now. But it's still internal martial arts. It's still power. And it's still the ability to paradigm walk. And I think that's why that Sasquatch, that he felt that I was, part of that ancient world. And the aliens too, the ones, when they come around and check me out and stuff, and we communicate partially through remote viewing and stuff. It's just I'm just connected. But, no one's really going to understand these things. Biophysics and talking about it through science is also really healthy. And understanding the biofield as an electromagnetic energy that it is definitely around the body. And when that energy field dies, the body dies. I mean, it's not something that we cannot live without. We have to have it. And the Western modality, the way that it's structured, doesn't include magnetism and laughs at it. And that's part of a world that tried to decimate magnetism and ancient culture and magic. And they did a really good job at it, But the chi doesn't matter. The chi hides anyways. It doesn't want to be found. It doesn't want to be seen. You have to cultivate it through feeling and through discipline. And then once you can feel the chi and you understand energy, then you have these things called supernatural powers. But, it's hidden for a reason. It's intelligent. So it's hidden from the eyes of the profane. And the chi is also alive. It chooses the host. That's why, the Nagual procures a Nagual that is ready. And there's been a couple little Naguals that have come around, and I've taught some things too. But yeah, this stuff is you have to have a type of sobriety that most people today don't have. And I'm talking about, it's a cosmic sobriety. And this cosmic sobriety is, you can paradigm shift. So I'm not exactly sure why I had the experience and the Nagual path, and then it moved into Tai Chi. But from what I understand, it's most likely all of this is a cosmic, universal religion Because even when you go to Egypt and you see them holding the balls of Ra, it's not at the sun that they're holding their electromagnetic field. And this is creating life-sustaining, life-regenerating energy that the body needs in order to survive the onslaughts, the universal current onslaughts. And of course, we could go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into all these different aspects of the luminous egg around the body. But basically, in the martial arts, they make it so hard and supple that it's like a rubber ball. So one person can basically move through a soldier, like 100 soldiers. And the ball is like steel. It's not like a soft energy. And that's what these internal martial arts were doing. And these secrets are highly coveted. So when it came to the Naguals, they were just going from one Nagual to another, word of mouth. And the same thing with these internal martial arts. And that's why people like Bruce Lee got in a lot of trouble for teaching Westerners internal martial arts. I learned from a Chinese man a master who taught internal martial arts in the Chinese military, and then he fled. And they were the Chinese government was cracking down on all of the Qigong masters. They all took off and started teaching Westerners. And so this I think is the true religion, space religion. Yin and yang. Left, right, male, female, tonal, Nagual, the Ba and the Ka in Egyptian. It's very simple, but most things that are real and true are simple. And even in our politics, left and right, Democratic, Republican. And I say that because I want to share the knowledge so that it bridges the gap of ignorance. Even right and wrong, good and evil, that's part of yin and yang philosophy. So you can't have one without the other. They're intertwined. You can't build your energy field and not be part of our brothers and sisters that are galactic in nature and in other paradigms. And that's why, I say it's not for everybody. But that's how it is. And even like in Star Wars and stuff, all of the Force and all that stuff, it's all real, it's all true. So that's what the ancients were doing, is they were cultivating their energy biofield in order to protect themselves, in order to maintain enlightenment, and ultimately, in the Nagual system, they were trying to withstand the impact of death. Because if you were able to keep your energy field intact at the point of death, you would remain conscious. Your energy field would traverse. You would be able to keep all your memories, all your knowledge, and just move from one lifetime to another, or one planetary system to another, whatever it was, and you weren't going to lose your memories lose your consciousness. So the Nagual Carlos was terrified of getting eaten by the eagle, right? At the end, he saw the man, his energy field, the all of the symbols that are dealing with death. And in the Egyptians, they had similar. But see, when you look at all history and all metaphysics and all theology through the eyes of the electromagnetic energy, yin and yang, then you are no longer tied to the Western precept of right and wrong and good and bad. There's only power and no power, or rather the path of love and the path of power, which is yin and yang. But one cannot survive without the other. You can't just be on the path of love. You have to survive, and you just can't be on the path of power with no love. And these are male, female, transitory, metaphysical energies that are primordial. They're primordial intelligences. But yes, the Naguals that were able to do it were able to burn from within, and much like the rainbow body of the Buddhists, who would burn from within, and they would compress the energy field in their hearts to the point where it created a little crystal. And if you go to certain parts of India, these Buddhists that transcended and left nothing but a tiny little crystal, and that's the crystal that's in your heart. And if you are correct in your light body, you're able to do this. But these are transcendental, ancient knowledge that has been lost. So the Nagual lineage is lost. And in some cases, these ancient religions or ancient philosophies were forgotten for a reason. These are primordial, universal philosophies, religions, theologies, some of these kings and queens, in the pyramids, they, massacre like 30,000 people in one day to bring the sun up. Or to communicate with these beings from different star systems or whatever it is that they were doing. The Aquarian age, the Christ age, Christ consciousness has left that behind. In other words, you can get to these places without hurting other people, which is why I think, I attracted these beings, because I just attained a certain amount of energetic control over my own energy field through meditating, through doing Tai Chi, through impeccable word action, with the celibacy that I practiced, with the abstaining from meat, all these asanas that they talk about in the Rig Vedas, and all the things that lead to enlightenment. But there's a lot that we still don't know about these things, and part of it has to do with attaining a type of immortality, whether it's soul immortality or physical bodily immortality. And that's what the conundrum is with all of these philosophies, with all these religions, with everything. That's what they're trying to do and they're trying to attain. But the Naguals, they did it through energy, and they were able to burn from within. In other words, the body, there is no body. There's only energy. So you just flip it. Instead of the body being so real and there's no energy, they flipped it so that the energy is so real and the body is gone. But they still have consciousness. And that's part of their burning from within. And all of this is just, it's just hearsay. It's just, we don't know. But so these are the things that I learned and I gleaned, not just from Carlos, but from other philosophies that, other ancient schools and practices that are trying to do this. And some are robbing and stealing and hurting other people to do it. And some of them are doing it through peaceful action. And that's one of the reasons why I really love the Buddhist philosophies. The Buddhists were able to do these things without, hurting a fly. And in many, many ways, it's superior. But the ancient Naguals came from some of this deep knowledge, probably, handed down from even more ancient peoples. So it's a very earthy culture. And if I had to choose between the Nagual and the Buddhism, I'd say Taoism. And I think Taoism, like I said before, is the space religion. It is the foundation from which Buddhism and Nagualism, is based. Okay, I think, there's so much more to say and so many tales and so many different memories. But yeah, that's it for now. That's, I guess, can be the first Carlos Castaneda vlog I've ever done. All of this happened in 92. And around there, 92, 93, 94. Started it in the 90s, 1990. Okay, so that's the first vlog. Again, I'm just going through this at the top of my head, not really going digging into details right now. I haven't even looked at the book in years, but just one last tidbit of information. That tan bag that I saw while I went to visit them, the last time I saw them, one of the women handed me, Kylie, handed me that bag. So there's no way that they knew that I really liked that bag. I don't recall even talking about it. It was just a random bag that I saw on the street that I really wanted but couldn't afford it. So on my way out, one of the last times I saw Carlos, they handed me that bag, and he said to me, unbending intent. That was the root of his lesson for me at that time. Okay, more to come soon. Bye.